Oh, you hadn't mass start yet. Oh, okay, good. All right, Bible study on the book of John, chapter 2, verse 13, and the temple, cleansing the temple. Jesus cleanses the temple. Now, let me tell you about John. John puts this at the very front of his book, whereas Matthew, it occurs in the final week before the crucifixion. That's Matthew 21, 12 through 13. Each synoptic gospel has the same, well, it has an account of Jesus turning the tables over and running them out of the temple. Mark has it in chapter 11, 15 through 17, happens the day after the triumphal entry into Jerusalem. Luke has 19, 45 through 46, a brief account right after Jesus enters the city. But John places at the beginning because of symbolism, if nothing else. It's not that he wants you to know who Jesus is. He wants you to know what Jesus is all about. And this is a point about Jesus here that he gets upset. And you say, well, is that a sin? No. He's sinless. So getting upset and having anger, it's according to how you use that, right? Revenge, that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about things like that. What we're talking about is what Jesus has done here. Now, like I said, the synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, put it at a different time. Now, some theologians, do you think it was more than one cleansing of the temple? So I looked that up. I never had thought about that. But John puts it at the first of the book, and these guys put it the final week before the crucifixion, the day after the triumphal entry, which was close to that. So some theologians believe Jesus cleansed the temple twice, at the starting of his ministry and at the end, and then others say it happened once, and that was at the end of his life, which would put Matthew, Mark, Luke with the kind of the right place. And it doesn't matter that John put it in the front of his book. He's not saying that happened exactly then. It could be that it happened where Matthew, Mark, and Luke has it. So I don't know. I never thought about that question before until when you start studying and start looking. You think about things like that. So anyway, we'll pick up in verse 13, and I'll read through the first few verses, and then we can come back and talk about it. And the Jews' Passover was at hand, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem and found in the temple those that sold oxen, sheep, and doves, and the changers of money sitting. And when he had made a scourge of small cords, he drove them out of the temple, and the sheep and the oxen, and poured out the changers' money, and overthrew the tables. And said unto them that sold doves, take these things hence, make not my Father's house a house of merchandise. And his disciples remembered that it is written, the zeal of thy house has eaten me up. Then answered the Jews and said unto him, what sign showest thou unto us, seeing that thou doest these things? Jesus answered and said unto them, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up. This said the Jews, 46 years was this temple in building, and wilt thou rear it up in 3 days? But he spake of the temple of his body. When therefore he was risen from the dead, his disciples remembered that he had said this unto them, and they believed the scripture and the word which Jesus had said. And I'm going to stop right there. Now let's go back. Jesus had just left Cana. He performed the miracle, turned the water to wine. And those pots that he turned, those pots, I don't know if I told you or not, but those pots were really symbolic in that the Jews had a ritual that they had to wash in the water in those pots and stuff. And some of them, when they got through washing, they would just let it drip till it dried. They didn't even use a towel to wipe off. They just let it dry. Now, and so why would the pots? Why would Jesus make sure you knew about the pots? Is because that's foreshadowing what he was going to come and do. He's coming to clean you up. He's coming to wash your sins away. You see. So I don't know if I read that somewhere this week, and I thought I'd share that. Verse 13 and 14. The Jews' Passover is at hand. What is the Passover, by the way? How about it, young folks? Y'all know what the Passover is? Y'all remember we have the Passover Seder in here? That's right. Right. Passover's got to do with what? Death. So it was what Brother Clay's teaching us in Exodus there. He's not quite there to it yet. We're on what, number 10? Somewhere in there. He's almost to it. And when he gets there, he's going to explain it. But it's the last of the plagues. It's the last of the plagues. Now he's done gave 9, and you know, I mean, it's just or 10. It's crazy. The man that, you know, he never got it. He never got it. And a lot of the Egyptians, they never got it. I mean, when the man's done did all these things and they come true, and you're coming down to the last one, I said, and we're going to kill the firstborn, and you don't listen, what kind of faith did they have? They had faith in those gods. They had faith in them statues. Had to. They thought maybe they're gonna wake up and do something against our God Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. No, that didn't happen. So he sent the death angel, and the death angel came by through the Egyptians could have took it and put the blood on their door. Right? Yeah. All in agreement? They had the chance, just like today. Everybody has the chance to put the blood on the door, if you will. And whoever put the blood on the door, the death angel passed by that night, and they didn't die. The ones that didn't have the blood on the door, they died. The firstborn died. They were burying them the next morning or whenever. Yeah, it was the whole 9 yards, and it was gone. But Pharaoh, well, his heart was hardened. He wasn't going to let them go. So this is what Jesus has come. So anything to do with the Passover, you should recognize. I'm not saying that we have to celebrate it. We used to do that. We used to celebrate it. Passover was this past April 1st through the 9th. And then you have the Feast of Unleavened Bread. It starts right after that. And that goes for 7 days. And the unleavened bread, it has no yeast in it because it represents when they left Egypt, they got left in a hurry, so they didn't have time for the bread to rise. So they had to eat unleavened bread, and that's what reminds you of that. So we got the Passover feast, and then how about 1 Corinthians 5:7? Who's got the Bible with them? 1 Corinthians 5:7, Miss Judy. Look, read that for us right there. 1 Corinthians 5:7, if you want to turn there, and it'll tell you, I think it tells us that Jesus is our Passover. It tells you about the leaven, I think. 1 Corinthians 5:7. Whenever you dare, you go ahead. Remember, leaven. Leaven represents something. Yep.
Purge out, therefore, the old leaven, that ye may be a new lump, as ye are unleavened, for even Christ our Passover is sacrificed for us.
It's all about him. The Passover was all about him. It was letting you know he's coming. And that blood on the door represented Jesus on the cross, and that where he was going to die for those people. And we're back in the Old Testament. Jesus hadn't been born yet, although he exists. But it was all about him. And here we go. Jesus comes in. The Passover was at hand. He went up to Jerusalem and found in the temple those that sold oxen, sheep, doves, and changers of money. He found the temple. Basically, he found the temple. And by the way, this temple was the second temple, and it was called the second temple or Herod's temple. In fact, the temple was still being built at this time. I guess most of it was done, and they've been building on it for 46 years. Can you imagine? It took a little while, didn't it? Anyway, he found the temple desecrated. It was in the court of the Gentiles where so much of the commercialism of this temple was taking place. How did the commercial market ever get into the temple, y'all? How did the market ever get into the temple? Now, temple represents church. I can ask it now. How do we let commercialism get in our church? Huh? It's all about money. Right. Yes, ma'am. No, they weren't. No. Yes, it lost its meaning. Because sin didn't bother them anymore, evidently. And so many people were idolatrous. And so people would just fall back on that, I guess. We'll just go by the statue of the false god shop and pick us one up and carry it home. We'll be good, Commercialism, it was very simply is greed and money. The oxen, the sheep, the doves, the incense, the meal, the wine, the oil, the salt, the other items for their sacrifices and offering. Pilgrims people came from foreign nations, needed money exchanged. And we'll get to that. But in some point in the history of the temple, the priest, here we go. Just what Allison said. In these days, who was in charge? Well, you're right, but the priests were, right? The priesthood, right? So what did the priests do? They allowed it to come into the church. Just as the preacher and the elders, if they allow stuff to come into the church, it's on them. It's not on the congregation. We need to change the leadership. These priests were crooked. These priests decided to take advantage of the market themselves. So here's what they did. Instead of letting the retailers on the outside reap the profits, they brought the retailers into the temple and set them up booths. And most of the time when they set the booths up, it was a family member. Oh yeah, I'm going to get it both ways. I'm going to get a little cut of that. I get 20%, 30%, whatever it is, and we're going to take advantage. Now, let me tell you, people came from a long ways to come to the Passover. Now, these people can't bring their sacrifice with them all the time, because if you brought a lamb, who you had to get it inspected, right? Who inspected it? Same ones just renting out the booths over here. Your lamb is imperfect. It's got a blemish on it. And granted, when a lamb has traveled that far, I'm sure I don't know what the criteria was when you start analyzing a lamb. I have no idea what the criteria was, what an imperfection was, or what it was. But here you go. They would bring it, but they'd say, that ain't going to cut it. We got you one right over here, dog. Go see Joe over here. Joe's got you one. He's ready to go. The prices were sky high. They were extremely high. And then you had people that were poor. They couldn't afford a lamb to start with. They couldn't bring nothing with them. So they were counting on the doves, the pigeons, the least cost thing, the thing that didn't cost as much. We got them right over here. See Joe. Joe's got all you want right over there, sky high. The people couldn't afford. You should have gave them that. It was designed. You should have gave them a pigeon or a dove. But what did they do? The priests were making money. They were desecrating the temple. We're going. So, I'll tell you, it's the booth, the very worship center for the. Oh, wow. We've got to take a break, eh? Man. Anyway, they set up the booths, and the outer courtyard of the temple, the very worship center for the Gentiles, was filled with booth-like spaces where worshipers could find any kind of service they needed, like I said. So the atmosphere was one of commercial traffic, commotion, and smelly animals. Can you imagine what it smelled like? Can you imagine the dung on the floor? And I mean, it was just like, man. And there's thousands of people here. So you got animals, the noises. It's just a chaos in the temple. This is supposed to be a place of worship. Can you imagine all that commotion going on in our church? What the heck would we do with all that? When I went to church when I was a young kid, it was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. We have at least let up on that a little bit. I mean, if you got one running around, so be it. Let them run, If you would have run around in my day, your butt would have got taken out that back door, and you'd have been embarrassed when you walked back in because everybody in that church knew you got your butt cut. And I mean a butt cut. And I ain't talking about a butt cut. Yeah. So it's no wonder Jesus did what he did because he had all of these people. It was the greed. How about this? Abby, you got your Bible? Luke 19:46. Look that up for me. All right, Timmy, you ready? I'm going to give you a good one, Bo. Ecclesiastes 5:1. That's over there by Proverbs. It's right after Proverbs. I'll give you that much. And the only reason I know that is because I went the other day. So that's the only reason I know that. Ecclesiastes 5:1. Kim, you can do Psalm 89:7 for us. And whenever you get 1946, you just let me know, Abby, and we'll read. I want you, because what these verses are going to tell you a little bit about the temple, a little bit about God's house. Whose house was it? It was God's house. We refer to our church as the Father's house sometimes, right? God's church and the church. People mistake the building as the church. The church is the people, and y'all know that. The church is the people. Go ahead. What does it say in Luke 19:46? There you go. My house is a house of prayer, but you made it what? A den of thieves. Huh? You have? Where you hear that at? Tell me. 1946. You'll have to remind me because I don't remember. I'm getting too close. I'm close to the 70 club. No disrespect to the 70 club. I'm looking forward to joining you. Right. All right, Timmy. You got it? 5:1.
Keep thy foot when thou goest to the house of God, and be more ready to hear than to give the sacrifice of fools, for they consider not that they do evil.
There you go. You know what it means by keep thy foot? It means to walk prudently. It means to walk wise, use wise judgment, be careful of the dangers that are going on. And when you come to church, what's it telling you? Come to hear. Listen. Don't run your mouth and speak things without thinking. That's how church stuff gets That's how the church stuff gets messed up. Somebody says something, and the next thing you know, it's taken out of context. And the next thing you know, we got a feud going on. Or we got people mad at each other, right? Been there and done that. We've had a lot of that in our history together. We've had a lot of that. Great Sonkahatchee, come here. We had more of it. It's just the way it is. You come to hear, not to be speaking all the time. If you listen, you'll get to receive the word. But if you're talking, you ain't going to hear it. Okay, Psalm 89:7, Kim.
God is greatly to be feared in the assembly of the saints, and to be had in reference of all them that are about him.
Yeah, God is greatly to be feared. How many people fear God today, you think? I mean, go by their actions. Go by the way they act and about the way they do their daily lives and live their lives every week. People are not fearing God. They have no fear of him. They think God is a make-up-believe fable, or make-up, what would adults call it? You know, I want to say a story book, but you know, for adults, it's got to be like a fable or something. Adults, they just don't believe it. They think it's just made up. Well, that's a bunch of garbage. They've been saying he's coming back. He ain't been back in this many years. He ain't coming back. That's just something. When I die, I'm going in the grave, and that's going to be the end of it. Right? They got a rude awakening. That's all I can tell them. So let's look at the layout of the temple real quick. The layout of the temple, this temple, to see what was happening. It sat on Mount Zion, and it took up nearly 30 acres. Can you imagine that, of land? Yeah. Oh, I thought you raised your hand. I'm sorry. The temple consisted of two parts, the building itself and the temple precincts and courtyards, like precincts, like the police precincts. The Greek language has two different words to distinguish what's meant. The temple building, naos, N-A-O-S, was a small, ordinate structure which is decorated with complex designs and a lot of detail to the design. Can you imagine what all those designs of the temple and all that stuff you see in the olden days? That's what that is. It was sat in the center of the temple property. That's where that was. Only the high priest, this is where the Holy of Holies is. Only the high priest could go in there, and you know the deal. They tied the rope on his ankle so they could drag him out if he wasn't right with God. And he would go in there and put the blood on the mercy seat and for all the people, right? So that's the layout of that. The other building, the precincts, were 4 courtyards. Now these courtyards, I studied the tabernacle. I never studied the temple. I didn't realize how many courtyards it had. Well, 4 courtyards that surrounded the temple, each decreasing in their importance to the Jewish mind. It is important to know that great walls separated the courtyards. First one was the court of the priests. Of course, that's where you wanted to be. That's the high and mighty right there. Only the priests were allowed to enter the court, and that's where all the furnishings of the tabernacle was. What are some of the furnishings? Y'all remember some of the furnishings of the tabernacle? Because they just moved it. Basically, the temple is the tabernacle with a little layout, a little different layout design, if you will. You remember the table of showbread? You got the altar of the burnt offering on the outside. That's where the animals were burnt after they got the slaughter tables over there, and after they got the blood, then they bring the animals and burn them on the altar of the burnt offering. Then you got the laver, the brazen laver, and that's where the priests would wash before they went in. And then you have what? The altar of incense, the menorah, the 7-branch lampstand, and the table of showbread. And the table of showbread represented the 12 tribes of Israel. So that's what you got. That is the court of the priest. Second, there was the court of the Israelites. This was a huge courtyard where Jewish worshipers met together, joint services on great feast days. It was also where worshipers handed over their sacrifices to the priest. Third, there was the court of the women. How about that, girls? How about that, ladies? The court of the women. I didn't know that. Don't get too excited. Women were usually limited to this area except for joint worship with men. They could, however, enter the court of the Israelites when they came to make a sacrifice of worship in a joint assembly on the great feast day. So women didn't get they got a little bit more rights. I mean, you know, last there was the court of the Gentiles. That's the least. That's us. It covered vast space surrounding all the other courtyards and was the place of worship for all Gentile converts to Judaism. Two facts needed to be noted about that. The courtyard was the furthest removed from where? Take a guess. So I gave you four. This is the fourth one. The court of the priests, where the Holy of Holies is. So the court of the Gentiles was the furthest place away from that. They wanted to keep them as far as they could away from God, I guess. And which represented God's presence, of course. The high walls separated the court of Gentiles from the other courts, disallowing any Gentile to grow closer approach into God's presence. In fact, there were tablets up there that warned them, do not go past the goat. You know what I mean? Don't go past this because it's going to be death to any Gentile who went beyond their courtyard or the center of the worship. Yeah. That's what it says. Yeah. They had to stay in the court of the Gentiles.
If I'm not mistaken, I get this right. When they rebuild a temple, there's not enough room for the court of the Gentiles, and that'll be done away with, so you have a free access just like the rest of them.
Well, we have, right. We have a free access now today to that symbolically here on planet Earth, but you're right. I think that's right. I'm not sure. I didn't look that part up.
Yeah, I read that a while back.
So then, what would they gain from reverence?
I don't know. But that's what it said. It said that, it looks like to me they would have been able to go over there and join up with the Israelites, but I didn't see that. That's what I got on my research anyway. So it just shows you Gentiles were very much mistreated then. They weren't allowed to do certain things. So let me ask you this question. What right did Jesus have in cleansing the temple? And you say, well, he's God, right? But you know the story. You already know the end. You got to think in those days. What gave him the right? You got to picture yourself in Jesus' day, and people don't know he's the Messiah. And some have an inkling of information and say, yep, I might be. Then you have some that were sold out and knew he was. But what is he doing? What right did he have to walk into the temple and throw those people out? It was his Father's house, which is his house too. But in this, it is his house. He had every right to do that. The scourge of cords, that was a symbol of his righteousness. Anger and his right to be obeyed, his right to enforce obedience with the temple. That was his right with the scourge of cords. I read one thing that said, I wonder where he got the cords from, because the temple ain't got a lot of stuff hanging around now. I mean, it ain't like going in the marketplace would have had those cords. I read one thing. They said he could have took the cords that held his robe, and he used the cords off of his robe to make that, which would have represented more stuff symbolically towards his righteousness and stuff. So anyway, the kind of power and cleansing judgment causes men to tremble. He ran through the temple doing three things. He chased out all who were buying and selling. He threw over the tables of the money changers. And he threw over the chairs of the dove dealers. Now, the money changers. Now the money changers had a gig too. People would come there from different nations, so they'd have different currency or different things. And so, oh, we can take care of that. Go see Joe over here. He'll pick you up. Never gave them what it was worth. It cost them more to get the right change. You know what I mean? They had to get the change to go buy their stuff. Well, you know, what is it? If you go to foreign countries and you buy a currency and then you come back, you lose money. You know how that deal works. But that was what, hey, they were making money. He threw over the chairs of the dove dealers because they were messing over people. They were charging them an extremely high price for the doves, and they shouldn't have been doing that. So how can the temple, or in our case, the church, can be abused? So I had a question I wrote. I said, have we had any abuse of our building? Have we had making money in our church? Think about that for a second. Have we used our church to make money? Now I don't mean fundraisers or, stuff like that. But has anybody used the church to make money? Yep. That was one of them. The one I was thinking about. That thing hit me upside the head. That's the first. Listen, I don't mean no harm. Huh? What did who say? Kim? Taking pictures over there. And we're not throwing bricks here or nothing. But I'm telling you, brother, that's what came to my mind when I wrote the question. I said, well, you got to answer that question, old boy. Huh? No, but that's what they were doing. Yeah. Right. After I read that after I wrote that question, I said, that's probably not a good question, is it? Truth is truth. But you're right, brother. I don't know, man. But that's what was going on. Hey, brother. They were selling the animals. They were making money. The priests were making money off of the poor people. How many people you think? The majority of the people there would they be in the poor category or would they be in the well-off category? I can tell you, I would believe mostly poor people. They had to travel a long ways. They had to use their money. They had to eat along the way. I mean, it was more than a one-day journey for a lot of people. But you're right, brother. They what did they sacrifice? Well, that's right. That's right, and that's wrong. You should take care of him. There's a lot. There's a lot that a preacher, if he does his job right, he's busy. And I'll use my brother, not because he's my brother, but my brother, he does his job. I promise you. He goes and he sees people, and man, yeah, I mean, he's had to put off trips to bury people, and yeah, he takes care of his flock. I believe that. I think if you went over there and asked any of the people over there, they would tell you that he does that. And I'm not bragging on him because he's my brother. I'm just telling you, he does his job, and it takes a lot of time. It takes time, y'all. When you got to go somewhere in the middle of the day, that's got your day shot. Think about it. You ain't got much time to do nothing early in the morning, then you got to go get dressed and go, and then when you come back, especially this time of year, it's hot. You don't bloat it. So, I mean, yeah. I mean, if your church is making money, something's wrong. How about the churches? I really don't see anything wrong with it, but go ahead. Right. Right. You know, the thing that will get you with that is how, everybody can't afford that. Right? Think about that for a minute. It goes back to the people that couldn't afford a lamb. They couldn't buy a lamb. They didn't have a lamb. A lot of people might want merchandise or something. They can't afford to go in there. You know, you got the coffee bars and stuff, and if you charge an outrageous price for that, people can't afford to even buy a cup of coffee. You can't. Oh, it's no doubt. Fundraisers is one thing, but if you... Yeah. Free. He could charge. He could charge there. He does. He has a lot of merchandise. But it goes back. It ain't. He ain't filling up his pocket with it. Yes. And that tour you take, you could easily charge money for that. Whereas some places do charge money for different things like that. I'm not saying that you can't have fundraisers or none of that. I excluded that from the word go. You can have all that. I'm talking about when you're making money and you're using it for things that what were the priests? They weren't putting it back in the temple. They were fattening themselves. They were getting wealthy. They're putting it in their back pocket. Right. And if you're doing that, you can't use churches to make money. People go to church because it's a good business center. It's a good business hub. You meet a lot of people. Now, here you're not going to meet that many, but if you go to a place like Victory or those big churches, you're going to meet all kinds of people in there doing business. Well, let me give you my business card. You know what I mean? And they keep going back because, hey, it's good business. It's good for business to do that. Yeah, I can't remember who, but I can almost guess who that was. But yeah, and he said that. It was a he too, wasn't it? Yeah, for good business. Church is good for business. That ain't what you come. I mean, you missed it. You missed it. You walked in the door and you missed it because you didn't come there for Jesus. You came there to fatten your pocket. Jesus' relationship to God, he called the temple my Father's house. My Father's house. It was called a house of worship. It wasn't meant for a house of sacrifice or offerings, teaching, prophecy, or preaching then. It was there to go and worship and pray. Everything done within the house of God is to lead to the worship of God. When we come in our church, we sing, we pray, and we preach. And God likes all three of those. We might have a praise report every now and then, but I think praise reports are one of the most important things your church can do. We tell every Sunday, we say, this person's sick, this person. But if you know somebody that got, well, we need to say it. I don't care if they had a sinus infection. If they're better, prayer works. And you don't know, you say, well, he went to the doctor and got some antibiotics. Well, that's true. But he could have been sick a week more. God might have touched him or her. And he got over a little quicker. You know, I believe that happens. You don't think so? I do. Anyway, Jesus had zeal for this place. Zeal is wanting something passionate. I did look up what y'all think zeal is. I looked up the definition. A strong desire to achieve a goal or a cause. Zeal. Do we have zeal in our church? Do we really have zeal in our church? Think about it. Being on fire for the Lord, you know. The Messiah, Jesus was letting these people know when he called it the Father's house, he was telling them that I am the Son of God. I am the Messiah. But them religious guys, those priests, didn't want to hear that. His authority questioned by the religionists. What right did you have to do with what he was doing? He claimed that the temple was his father's, and they wanted a sign. They said, well, we need to see a sign that you are who you say you are. But his sign was going to come later, wasn't it? His sign comes when he's hanging on the cross, and his death, burial, and resurrection was the sign. I'm the Messiah. You killed me. You murdered me. That's really what it is. If you get down to it, it's first-degree murder is what they did. His sign was given in the future. He was going to build a new meeting place with God. His exact words, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I'll raise it up. That is in verse 19. Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I'll raise it up. He wasn't talking about the temple itself, although he could slap one together in minutes if he wants to. He could build a temple right out there if he wants to. In any amount of time, he can make something supernaturally appear. But he was talking about his body. He was talking about the body. His proof was that he was the Son of God, what I just told you, and the resurrection was going to be the supreme proof that he was the Messiah. 17, John records 3 times when Jesus' disciple remembered either something in Scripture or something Jesus said, and that was in verse 17, 22, and in John 12:16. Though these uneducated, they might have been uneducated by the world's standards, but it was obvious they had hidden the word in their heart. They knew a lot of things that was going on. The second reason the church exists, why does the church exist? Is for the edification of the brethren. What does that mean? What do you think edification means? That's edify. We come together. People say, well, I don't have to go to church to be saved. Yeah, you do. You need to be. I ain't going to say that 100%, but you need to be. You need to come and help each other. That's what the church is all about. And the other reason was exaltation for worshiping, and we discussed that. And then the third reason is evangelism. We need to have evangelism in the church. Why? Because healthy sheep just naturally reproduce, don't they? If the sheep are happy and the sheep are saved and they got faith, you can have faith, but saved faith is what you need. Not the faith that you just believe he exists. A lot of people believe Jesus exists. Jehovah's Witnesses believe he exists. And they'll give you a description of him, but they don't know him. They don't have saved faith. The Mormons don't have saved faith. All of the rest of them out there, they don't have saved faith. Their faith is in something that ain't true. The atheist, he don't have saved faith. He's got faith. Trust me, he's got faith. He's got faith to believe in evolution. I just told these youngsters the other night about evolution in the Bible. We talked about creation and how that is explained. I said, for the ones that are going to public school, I said, homeschoolers, you ain't got nothing to worry about because your family's going to tell you that's just a lie from hell to start with. But for people that go to the public school, I said, they're going to teach you. They're going to tell you about this, and I'm going to tell you tonight it's a lie. And I'm not telling you to go misstudy your questions on your test. You need to pay attention and do what you're supposed to do in school. And if you got a test question, you need to answer it and all that. But they're teaching you lie after lie after lie that evolution is true. Evolution is the biggest lie. At best, it's a theory. At best. People are a lot smarter than me. I've listened to some people that, my gosh, where they get all that information from? But it's so true. Evolution, if you had evolution, one of the, maybe it was, who asked me that? Was it you? Told me evolution, we would be still evolving. Didn't you make that comment? No. One of you did. We would still be evolving if evolution worked. It would still be going on, and it ain't happening. Yes? Caleb said that. Sorry, Caleb. I was giving credit to your sister there, buddy. She smarter than you, or are you smarter than her? That is the question. How about that? I stirred that up, didn't I? I got that stirred up. I can tell you Abby's answer. All right, that's all I got. I ain't going no further. That's enough for tonight. Yeah.